Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 255 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the second-hand podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd. And tonight, she's amazing. She's wonderful. She's radiant as the sun in the east. Erin Paulette! How you doing, Erin?
I'm also very good with episode title.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Because, yeah, if you read the episode title and you're like, man, that's clever, I didn't write that. Not
yeah,
it.
You wanted to name it Gavin Newsom can't even get constitutional amendments right.
Yeah, that was the. You're like, you'll like it. Do you like it? I'm like, yes, I do.
So how am I doing? I've mentioned this on the blog, but this is the first year that I'm going to be a presenter at LibertyCon, and I'm going to be, I'll be on several panels, the opening ceremonies because I'm a presenter, and there'll be a Meet the Newbies panel, things like that. But the two that I'm really interested in, I'm going to be there in my capacity as a prepper. I really wouldn't consider myself a professional prepper or an authority, but I've been doing this for, close to 10 years, so I've got something useful to say. And I've got two panels. One is on Saturday at, I don't remember the time, and it's going to be called The Basic Survivalist. And then the other one is at 10 a.m. on Sunday on building bug-out bags. And it's just me. I'm the only person who's doing that class. It took me by surprise because this is my very first LibertyCon appearance. They don't know how competent I am or what kind of job I'm going to do, but yeah, let's just have her do a solo presentation. And it'll be fine. I know I can do a good job. It's just I'm up against, among other things, the coffee clatch with Steve, with Timothy frickin' Zahn and David frickin' Weber. Oh. So, among other people, but those are the two big name ones. Interestingly enough, they didn't mention Larry, and he's the guest of honors. Maybe he's doing something else then. I don't know. But I think, okay, I'm got to be better about not bad talking myself here. So, I started to say, only people who couldn't get into the class will be showing up for my class, but that's not true, because Oddball said he would be there, and Xander said he'd be there, so that'll be fun. But anyway, the reason why I'm rambling about this is that what I've been doing for the past week or so, once I realized it was just me, I've actually been tearing my bags apart and making a new one for demonstration purposes, because I have two, and they've got two different uses, and I can't afford to bring both along. I've got one which is a get-home bag, which is basically, okay, I'm in Tennessee, and something bad really happens, and I can't drive home. This is the bag that I use for an enforced unexpected stay, and who knows, maybe things have gotten so bad that I have to walk home. I don't know. The other one is just a basic, 3-day, let's go camping sort of thing. And neither one is properly a 72-hour bug-out bag, so I've been cannibalizing from both in order to make one that'll last basically as long as it takes for me to go there and come back, and then I'm going to break it right down again. And so, I don't know. Okay, knowing me, and knowing how I stress about things, it's very likely that I will have this bag and never once tear into it, that it'll all be answering questions, and talking about things and I will never actually rip into the bag, but I would feel so much better having it there and knowing that it's ready rather than just I walk in, I start talking, and someone says, well, give us an example. So that's the big thing. And let me tell you, if you think that you are ready to be an expert on something, teach a class on it, because you will realize very quickly, oh, wow, I completely forgot about X, Y, and Z. As I'm putting together this brand new Bug-It bag, it's like, hey, it never occurred to me that I should do such and such. And so I'm waiting on supplies from Amazon that should hopefully be here by tomorrow, because I leave for LibertyCon on Thursday. So I'm just a little bit stressed about it, because that's how I do. I pregame all my stress, and then when it comes to the day, it's like, well, I'm not on fire, so everything is fine.
Yeah,
so that's how I'm doing.
Yeah, that's essentially the knowledge version of alpha and beta testers. I'm going to teach a class. Oh, yeah, I never thought about that, but I'm glad you did. We will add an addendum. I will look that up. But also, I can see, I guarantee, Erin, that even if it is just you answering questions, you will still tear into the bag, because you'll be like, oh, what do you do for this? Well, I could answer this with a simple one-word thing, or I could pull out a hatchet.
Let me show you this cool thing I have.
I'm like the Carrot Top of preppers.
I should be offended, but it's true. Ow.
I mean,
ow, my pride.
Carrot Top made a pile of money for prop comedy. The issue is, do you consider prop comedy to be junk? And you know what? I've laughed a lot harder at a bunch of Carrot Top bits than a lot of these supposedly amazing new comics. So let's not throw Carrot Top under the bus.
Okay. So how are you doing, Weer'd? Did you have a lovely Father's Day yesterday?
I had a better than average Father's Day. For whatever reason, Father's Day as of recently tend to be my daughter having a meltdown over something insignificant and the day just completely going to pot. And that almost kind of happened, but then it ended with us going over to a friend's house, and we kind of did like a joint Father's Day and cooking and I made pretzels and then
you played Abduction.
And then we played Abduction, yes. And I snapped a picture and sent it to you and Xander, because I'm like, we're all sitting there and like it's getting towards the end of the game, and it's just, the table is just well played, and it's one of those like, I better snap a picture before this is done, because I want to just show you, like, no, we're having a friggin' blast. Like, this game is great. Yeah. So we played. I think we only ended up playing one, because we suddenly looked at our watch and realized, oh my gosh, it's getting late and there are small children here. But yeah, and that was a whole lot of fun. There's also another game. My mom got it for us. Was it for Christmas? I'm trying to remember when this game showed up. We had it for a while before we actually broke it up and played it, and it's a lot of fun. It's called Carcassonne, named after the medieval city in France, though.
Yes, I know that game.
Yeah, though my daughter calls it meatball casserole and I call it cassowary. So and yeah, and we keep forgetting as we play to essentially, you flip over tiles and then you essentially build off the landscape. You need to essentially place the tile adjacent to another tile, and it needs to work. So if there's a road, the road needs to be completed. If there's a city, the city needs to continue on, and all of that. And you place your you've got they call them meeples for reasons I don't understand, but essentially your knights on these areas to control them, and you gain points for them. It's a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun. And we keep forgetting to send like a picture of the table with like the completed cityscape on it to my mom, who got it for us, just to show like, see, it's a whole lot of fun. But yeah, I highly recommend that game. But I did remember to send a picture of Abduction to you and Sander, because it is like, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of me making quack noises. Well, every time the ducks get abducted, you got to make the quack noises for them. But yeah, our friends were like, they were setting up the there's a flying saucer that you pull the ducks out of, and you set up your game piece individually. And my friend was like, "Okay, there's tiny ducks. Oh God, they're cute." We still haven't played the expansion yet, just because we're still noobs. But yeah.
Okay, I was gonna ask if you had the glitter ducks or sparkle ducks or whatever.
We definitely have the sparkle ducks. We just haven't played with them yet, because we're let's still get the basic stuff. I mean, this was the friends we were playing with was the first time they were playing. I think it's like the fourth time I've played the game. So yeah, we would have played one more, but again, it was getting late, and I had a handgun radio to record.
Really, they should issue an expansion with the ducks made out of a stretchy material, and then they'd be rubber ducks.
Yes, that would be cool. Or yeah, it's the flying saucers cast silicone. You could cast silicone duckies, and then they'd be squishy.
I was making a reference to the 1980s movie Convoy.
Oh yes. I never saw that one. That's Chris Christopherson, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Though I'm going to say that I love Chris Christopherson, though my love for Chris Christopherson has an X, and I don't know where the peak X is, but I find that Chris Christopherson in the 70s was a very, very much to be desired actor, but amazing singer-songwriter, and recently he's been doing much, much, much better acting, but I can't recall a decent song that he's written in the modern times. By all means, send me a no. This Chris Christopherson song is amazing. It's as good as "Loving Her Was Easier Than Anything I'll Ever Do Again" or "Sunday Morning Coming Down." But I blame the booze and the pills. He got off of one and one talent turned to another. Well, now there's not really an easy way to transition to the main topic. So let's just grind the gears. So that we are recording this on Juneteenth. Is this the first time it's
okay? So when you say celebrated, there's two ways to interpret that, because here in the Deep South where I live, it has been celebrated for a long time. But in terms of it being a federal holiday, it was only made a federal holiday in 2021.
Okay. So, all right. Yeah. So that's, So there's been a couple of years. But this clearly this event they kicked off early, but there was a Juneteenth celebration in Willowbrook? Am I reading that correctly? Yeah, Willowbrook, Illinois. And unfortunately, it turned violent. And let's see, one person died, and 22 others were injured. Unknown if how many were gunshots, and when you see lopsided numbers like that, some of it is the crush of people trying to get out of the way of the people with guns. But
well, it literally says in the third paragraph, at least 12 ambulances rushed to the scene, hurrying people to hospitals with injuries ranging from graze wounds to serious gunshot wounds.
Okay,
and some were hurt trying to flee.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out, for people who don't know where Willowbrook, Illinois is, it's a suburb of Chicago.
Okay. I should have looked that up, but
it was literally the first sentence in the article.
Oh yeah, suburban Chicago. Look at me. Words are hard, Erin. I scrolled right past that looking for the motivations, and they're still looking for the killers, but it was multiple people who were shooting. And
well, I mean, in terms of motivation, at around 12:25, police got a 911 call by people claiming that a fight had broken out, and as the deputies responded to that, they heard gunshots. So it sounds like, and this is because it was in Chicago. I want to get the Chicagoese right. People were beefing, and things escalated from fighting to shooting.
Mm-hmm. Like they do. Yeah. So yeah, this is just another fine example of gun control and how well it works. And of course, our hearts go out to the families. But yeah, this was in Illinois. This was not in North Carolina or Maine. Yeah, and it just sucks that it was a Juneteenth celebration. It sounds like there was lots of people there. This was not just a, I don't know, just some sort of block party or rap release album where it's one of those okay, yeah, it's going to be mostly just grown adults who if there's shady people doing shady things, they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So I want to make a specific mention before we put this to bed. It's at the very end of the article, and there is a woman named, and I may mispronounce her name, but I believe it's Delavia Whitaker, and she is a nurse. And so, well, it says she was nearby. She might not have been actually attending the party. I don't know. But she gave immediate medical aid to the gunshot victims. And so she was, making improvised bandages with socks, making tourniquets, things like that. And while we may never know how much of a difference she made, she clearly made a difference. And so good on you, Ms. Whitaker, for having the courage and the presence of mind to respond like that. And I feel confident in saying she saved lives. It may have just have been a life, but she saved lives doing that. And so good for her.
Well, as an RN and applying improvised tourniquets, because certainly you might have been one of the ones that saw the person who was in an Antifa riot, and this person got, I don't know what happened to them, but they had a serious but still on the side of superficial leg wound, and someone was putting a tourniquet on him, and it's one of those it's barely bleeding. Just put that is a clear sign for direct pressure. But this was a nurse, and if they were both it wasn't like I got a tourniquet, I might as well use it situation. No, I need to make a tourniquet. That's probably a life was saved because this is someone who knows what arterial flow looks like and knows how serious that is. And yeah, yep. if you're leaking good, that's one of those ones of no, you've got minutes, if not seconds. So yeah, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that she saved some lives. And yeah, another reason to carry a tourniquet. Again, I point out the Boston bombing, the number of lives lost was very, very small, and that is likely linked to the fact that, number one, it was in the heart of Boston, and there's several first-class trauma hospitals within very, very walking distance of that bombing site. But also a National Guard group had just finished in their full battle rattle, and so they had tourniquets on them, and so there was a lot of limb amputations from the explosion, and they were able to quickly tourniquet those and control the bleeding, and that absolutely saves lives.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are lots of bad things to have come out of the 20-year war in the Middle East, and I'm not going to try and justify it, but one of the good things to come out of it has been the advancement in tourniquet science, because when I was studying first aid, in the 80s and 90s, I was told that you only do tourniquet for an extreme life or death thing. Plus, you've got to periodically loosen it to prevent, the limb dying and gangrene and things like that. And as a result of, it's war. People get hurt. You have a lot of useful medical data. I tried to say both. And so they were noticing that, when the medevacs or the parajumpers would come in and get people, they would have these tourniquets on for hours. And first of all, it's better to lose a limb and live than to worry about someone's limb and then they die. But the anticipated nerve damage from having a tourniquet on for hours was, I don't know if it was negligible, but it was minimal. In other words, it was a case of, hey, it's really not as bad as we thought it might be. And so that has led to the explosion of, tourniquets are no longer just for EMTs anymore. Ordinary people can and should know how to use them, such as with Stop the Bleed classes. So that is a silver lining if you're looking for that sort of thing. So hopefully the people who died in Iraq and in Afghanistan, their legacy can be, as a result, people will be trained in traumatic first aid, and they can save more lives in the future.
Yeah, no, that's a great takeaway. And so that case in Illinois was thankfully lots of people wounded, but only one person died. That is not the case here in Uganda, which, speaking of gun control not working, it appears that it was an ISIS-linked rebel group went into a school,
killing at least 41 people, mostly students, and abducting 6 others. Some were hacked to death with machetes, while others died when their dormitories were set on fire.
See there, I scrolled past. I'm seeing the breakdown of the dead, and I'm like, oh, this is math. I'm not going to do that. And Erin looks at the first paragraph and like, oh yeah, no. I usually skip over that because that's just like the setting the scene. Oh, so yeah, this was real bad, and death with machetes. So yeah, gun control all you want. We can make this from a truck spring. So it's, I don't know what to say. It's Uganda. So like, we don't like it when people from other countries tell us how to live our lives. We're not going to tell the people of Uganda how to do this, but it is a place that has very, very strict gun control. There's a whole bunch of interesting firearm stuff that comes out of this part of Africa, where that's where I first heard about wax shells, where because shotguns tend to be one of the more ubiquitous firearms that are allowed. But in the case of some countries, including in Africa, actually having slugs in your shotgun is not allowed, and maybe even buckshot. Instead you can only have birdshot in your shotgun. And so people go, all right, cool, pop the top off of it, pour some paraffin wax down onto it, and then let it harden. And then now they stay together. Ta-da! It's a slug.
But yeah, all the gun control laws, or lack thereof, really won't do any good when an armed terrorist group of 20 people decides that they are going to cause harm. As we've said before, criminals don't follow laws. So, laws against murder don't stop people from murdering. And so really in this case, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on that. 20 people, that's about a platoon, I think. Military people, please tell me if I'm wrong or not. But yeah, when you've got and they were probably armed with AK-47s because that is the choice of small arm for rebels and terrorists, well, pretty much around the world, but definitely in Africa. And so, yeah, if you've got 20 terrorists with AK-47s, this is not a legal situation anymore. This is, I mean, I guess you could call it an act of war, except for the fact that they're terrorists. It's not another nation, but it's awful. It's tragic, and yeah, you've got to run.
Or since fighting is out because they have you outgunned, and that's also the other side of gun control that they don't talk about, is that the bad people that do not care about the laws or the rules or human decency, they don't care, and they're going to get what they are going to get, and that means that number one, they're going to outgun you drastically. And then number two, if they're going to try to hack you up with a machete or close you up in a dormitory and set it on fire, you're not going to be able to do anything. Same also with that jerk that we talked about last week in France that was hacking at the kids. It's just you're going to have to improvise, use a backpack, because you don't have a pocket knife. You don't have a baton. You don't have a gun. So you're going to have to do what you're going to do. Hope you took some martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for me, this is not, a matter of the laws failed. This is a matter of the nation did something wrong. I don't know. I know Uganda exists, and it's in Africa, and that's about it, so I'm not going to pretend to know. But, I mean, this sounds like the sort of thing that, strong borders and, a military and a police presence, prevent these armed terrorists from coming in, from existing. But, I don't know. All I know is that, at this point, this was beyond the capability of civilians to deal with. Honestly, I think this would be beyond the capacity of someone who is trained by the military, unless he had a number of other military people with him. Because action heroes in movies aren't real. This is the sort of thing that you would expect, like, Steven Seagal to respond to, or Bruce Willis. But normal people, if they're outgunned 20-1, at most they do a fighting retreat. Mm-hmm. Unless, of course, you're a Gurkha, in which case you're bat stuff insane and you'd charge. You'd probably die, but Gurkhas are like that.
I don't think you can kill Gurkhas. I don't want to try it. They have a Gurkha. So again, condolences out to those families. We're not preaching on all that. I saw this as another example of gun control not working, and again, the tyranny of gun control, in the fact that when bad people roll into town, if you can't fight back, they are going to roll into town. And I mean, honestly speaking, like, if these guys were coming into town and some people from these dormitories that got fired started popping off rounds at people, there's a good chance that they might just say, maybe not this village. Mm-hmm. Let's find a softer target. And so not even can they get in a full firefight and fend off these battle hardened terrorists? Maybe not, but at the same time also that line from Tombstone with the you may be able to rush me to get you, but I'm going to kill you first. Well, maybe let's rethink things.
You die first. The others may get me, but not before I turn your head into a canoe.
Such a good movie. And we have an ACP film track of it. So let's shift gears back to the United States, where we can actually talk about gun control here. This is an article from Cam Edwards, and it's, I mean, number one, it's a feel good story talking about this. This group has started a trap league in Minnesota, and it is just booming. Like, talked about 12,000 participants and teams from 350 high schools. Like, this is like a huge deal. And I love it for a shooting sport in the 21st century, where it's so much dying down. I mean, you always hear about, like, the old dude at the gun club talks about being on the high school rifle team. And there are still some high school rifle teams, but boy, they're dying off. Like, so many of the schools used to have a rifle team, but not anymore. and it's good to see that this trap league is doing so well.
One of the things that jumped out at me reading the linked Yahoo article is that they're talking about how they built the league from nothing. And in order to do that, these two people, Sable and Nelson, they pitched trap shooting or clay target shooting. They focused on its inclusivity. And I'm going to quote the article here. Teams only need 5 students and aren't gender segregated. The sports accommodates a wide range of body types and physical abilities. You don't have to be the fastest, the strongest, or the tallest. You could have an offensive lineman from the football team next to a girl on the dance team, next to somebody on the debate team, next to somebody in a wheelchair. End quote. Mm-hmm. And so, first of all, in today's increasingly combative climate involving sports, a sport where your size, your gender, your athletic ability doesn't matter, that is fantastic. And secondly, I love the fact that they have sporterized the notion of the firearm being the great equalizer. Usually we pitch that in terms of self-defense, and rightly so, but they're saying, yeah, it's an equalizer when it comes to sports, too, and everyone can compete, and it doesn't matter who you are. And I think that was just absolutely fantastic, and apparently that worked. I read somewhere that they've got something like about 40,000 people in the statewide shooting league, and that's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's really, really cool. If you haven't gone out and shot some clay birds, like, go give it a try. I mean, my club does both trap and sporting clays, and their sporting clays course is pretty decent. And they have a club gun that if you just show up and say, "Hey, I don't have a shotgun," they get a couple of fairly budget friendly Stogers that work just fine, and you could dust them off and give it a try. If there's a couple of newbies in there, you may have to pass it around, but that's another interesting thing, is the fact that you don't necessarily need, while ideally you'd want a shotgun that's fitted to your length of pull, but let's be honest, you could buy one inexpensive over-under shotgun and pass it between the students, and you'll be doing all right. So it's just it's a fun sport. It's a good sport, and kids will enjoy it. And again, it's another way to get their foot in the door to teach them firearms safety and get them interested possibly in other stuff. We got these things called rifles and pistols too. Mm-hmm. Oh, tell me more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's another thing that was mentioned in there about how they have had 0 injuries. There are more people injured playing football than have been in this sport, in this trap league. And first of all, that's amazing. Good for them. And secondly, this references something I've been saying for as long as I've been a Second Amendment activist, and that is, we don't believe in abstinence-only sex education. Why then do we insist on abstinence-only firearm education? So, yes, teach these children firearms safety. And obviously they have, because they haven't had any injuries. And good for them. And while realistically, I know that that's impossible because every sport has injuries, I hope they keep this for just as long as possible.
I mean, I still chuckle about the fact that, I know people who blew out their knees playing high school football. My dad has 2 artificial knees, 2 artificial hips, all due to an injury he sustained playing basketball in high school. And so he blew out his ACL, and back then he declined the ACL surgery. And then, fast forward, 50 years of walking on that injured knee just destroyed his lower joints. But meanwhile, I've accidentally had I've gotten actions closed on fingers. There was one time I had a 1911 not go fully into battery, and so I bapped my hand on the back of it, and it had a Bomar sight. It took a big chunk out of my palm, and literally there was a piece of it hanging off the sight. It was Wally's gun. He's like, "Oh, weird." It was just like, there was a piece of me on it, and I'm like, oh. and and things like that. But I think at that same shoot that we were at, the worst injury was somebody stepped on a nail while walking down range. So it is, firearms are an extremely safe sport, like so much that everybody that is injured by firearms in this country is pretty much injured on purpose. It is either through malicious violence, righteous violence, or self-harm. And it almost never by accident. I think we've got like 200 gun deaths a year by accident, at least the last time I looked at the statistics, which is, in a country this size, nothing. And so, it's alarmingly safe. It is a fun sport. Again, it's an inexpensive sport if you're sharing the shotgun. I mean, you can go real expensive. Some of those over-unders are thousands of dollars. But but the big thing that got me and got Cam was that Chris Brown of the Brady campaign jumped up, and she had a horrible problem with this and says, I look at anything funded by the National Rifle Association, which, by the way, the National Rifle Association has kicked some money into to help this program out.
About $1 a student, really.
Yeah. And I look at anything funded by the National Rifle Association with a jaundiced eye, because about 30 years ago they stopped talking publicly of the risks associated with firearms. She said, in a country, suicide with a firearm is at a 40-year high, and that's particularly true with teenagers, which is really not that true, as the bulk of firearm suicides are adult males in above the age of 40. It is people entering their end of life stage, and this is youth shotgun, and she's just looking for any way to just speak out against this, because the anti-gunners always say, "Oh, we're not coming for your guns," or "We support the sporting use of firearms," until you say, "Hey, we're going to be doing some sporting use of firearms." Like, this is not like hardcore Second Amendment stuff. You go to England and they're shooting skeet. I mean, this is an Olympic sport. And so you will watch, when the Summer Olympics come around, you can watch the Olympic skeet events, and you will see people from countries where you just cannot easily get a gun there but again, I mentioned the African cut shells or wax shells to get around the gun laws. But shotguns are one of the last guns to get, at least the break open shotguns, or the last guns to be banned from a country, and so trap and skeet are very, very safe in the political scheme of things, so much that this can be a refuge of the FUDs, if you will. So it's not even like this is like 3-gun or IDPA or IPSC, and yet here Chris Brown is speaking out against it, because they're coming for all the guns, even your over under shotgun,
which is kind of ironic since David Hogg has been shooting trap.
Correct. Yeah, he's been talking about the fact that I guess his family owns at least one shotgun, and I posted I just did a quick search and found him shooting at the Harvard Sportsman Club, which I wanted to point out. First up, the Harvard Sportsman Club is called that because it's in Harvard, Massachusetts, not because it's associated with Harvard University. It's probably, I didn't look it up, it's probably named after the same dude, but they are they're a good distance apart from each other. But it's an absolutely beautiful club, and it is the club that sponsors the Pink Pistols Range Day here in Massachusetts. So It's like they literally the president there went and said said to them, "Hey, can we have a range day here for that?" And they went, "Yeah, let's get you some funding." like wait, no, I was just gonna ask if it was okay, but no, we're gonna supply ammo.
Oh, that's fantastic! I didn't know that.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it is good. I unfortunately I'm embarrassed to say, but like weekends are so crazy for me. I have not had a chance to get out there, but it's on my list to get to one of the Pink Pistols range day. It's been ages since I've shot at the Harvard Club, but there's a video of David Hogg shooting at Harvard, and of course he's doing it like politicians in the 90s used to, on the look at me holding a shotgun, I'm a fan of the Second Amendment. And David, maybe you're too young to remember this, but yeah, we already learned that lesson, that somebody holding an over-under shotgun has no problem with taking our guns away. But I guess Chris Brown would have a problem with David Hogg trap shooting, because maybe David Hogg will commit suicide. No, we'd never want that. Too far.
For legal reasons, I cannot comment.
That was a joke. David Hogg's a grown man. He can choose to do with his life as he wishes.
Your Honor, my client has a very strange but legally protected sense of humor.
and this last one, it was actually I thought about it late in writing up the show notes, and I went down to go that I was going to send you a text message to say, hey, Erin, just so you know, I'm adding this at the last minute because I realized I'd forgotten about it. And there was a message saying, do you want to talk about this? Yes, I do. This is one of the more effed up stories that I have seen, but it goes on a long line of other stories. But this happens at a firearms shop in Great Falls, Montana, and it's called Highwood Creek Outfitters. And he says a team of IRS agents have stormed into his gun shop and then left with the 4473s and nothing else.
Well, it's actually a combined group of IRS and ATF. The ATF was apparently providing support or assistance. Here we go. A spokeswoman for the IRS would only say that they were there on official IRS business. The ATF says it was providing assistance to the IRS. But yeah, the IRS acting on IRS business, quote unquote, they we'll go with raided the store, and they didn't take any financial records or tax statements or anything like that, but they did take all of the 4473 forms. Why the IRS needs these forms, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that this is... Okay, I'm speculating here, but it almost seems like, well, the ATF, if they can't get a hold of the 4473, then they will have a friendly agency come in and take them, and then that friendly agency can share it with them, and it's an end run around laws. What the purpose behind this is, I don't know. But the owner says, well, he alleges that he's been under constant surveillance by both state and federal agencies for the past 2 years.
Yeah, that's exactly where I went, is the fact that the 4473 has got a lot of important information, such as the new owner of the firearms, name and location, their home address, and other vital information about. It also has the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, so therefore it is a gun registry. Of course, we got that famous scene from Red Dawn, the only Red Dawn movie they ever made, where the Cuban general is instructing his soldiers to go into the gun shops and seize all the 4473s, and then go to the addresses on that to round up the guns. And but one thing it does not have is how much you paid for the firearm. And so therefore, what information about reported taxes that are going on, as in IRS stuff. The 4473s should have nothing to do with any tax information whatsoever. Like the cash register documents and the sales logs and things like that are more pertinent to the IRS than that. But again, the ATF, they're allowed to examine 4473s, but they are not allowed to scan them or upload them. There, of course, have been ATF agents that have been caught photographing 4473s. I talked about it with Benjamin Blatt about that. Is how they have adjusted the 4473 so all the pertinent information is all on one page, which would make it awfully easy to scan either surreptitiously or straight up. And of course, many stores have switched over to the electronic 4473 instead of doing it in paper, which also would be very, very easy to turn into a registry, even though that's not allowed. And in this case, there's laws that say that the ATF can't keep a gun registry. There's nothing saying the IRS can't. And that's, honestly speaking, all the crazy stuff that's been going on. I wouldn't put it past them.
Mm-hmm. But, okay, this would have been bad enough if the IRS had seized the 4473s along with all of the other pertinent business documents. But an argument could at least be made that the agents were acting with a preponderance of caution and didn't want to miss anything and just confiscated everything, and then they would return what wasn't needed. I mean, it still smells, but that is at least thinly justifiable. But when they take the 4473, but nothing according to income, I mean, at this point, it's so blatant. It seems like they want us to know that they're doing it, that they're rubbing our faces in it. We just did this, and you can't stop us.
It's also weird that unless they have like an itemized your receipts that go through. I mean, I know my personal gun shop just has the old fashioned cash register and the credit card machine, so that, you know, if you buy, you know, a gun and some boxes of ammo and a pistol vault and some cleaning supplies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then run your credit card, it'll say like $900 and that's it. Doesn't say if you bought one gun, two guns, no guns, or all that. It just said that you ended up blowing $900 that day at the shop. And so, you know, even to use the 4473 as like a way to cross-reference of there's a whole bunch of these high-dollar guns that were sold under cash transactions and weren't reported, so that you wouldn't have to pay the sales tax on them. I don't know. It's fishy. Like it seems like it would be a lot of detective work to try to use a 4473 in any way, shape, or form to make a tax inquiry. Be more important to be like using inventory. Like the bound book might make a whole lot more sense, because you can actually see what guns there are. And, you know, any sort of, you know, website or listings that shows the sale price of such guns, flyers and things like that. But the 4473, okay, so you sold a Smith & Wesson revolver. What did you sell it for? Did you sell it for the list price? Because I've certainly gone in and said, oh, that's a nice gun. Will you take X for it? And at one point I asked the local shop, they were offering something that was a pretty good deal. And I said, yeah, but will you take X for it? Expecting them just to say, nah, you can pay what you've got. Which I would have just said, yep, nope. But it was worth an ask. And it was absolutely worth an ask because they came down. I saved about $50 that day. So,
wow, nice.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this is fishy. I can't make it. You're hearing me rattling around in my head. I can't make it work any other way, but they want these 4473s because they want to do things to them that the ATF can't.
Really, what has me wondering is why this particular shop. And the only thing I can think of is that this was a test run, because this is a small shop, you know, in an out-of-the-way state. You know, they didn't raid like a big store in a big. Oh, I'm drawing a blank here, but okay. So I know for a fact that there are some really big and almost bespoke gun stores in Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
So some of them are very famous. They didn't raid one of those because that would have gotten publicity. It makes me think, well, we'll do this this little store in a town in Montana no one's ever heard of in the middle of flyover country, and maybe we can get away with it. And, well, they may still get away with it, but at least someone reported that it's happened. Maybe they were hoping that it wouldn't be reported. I don't know, but... Yeah, I mean, we're speculating, but the one thing I think we all agree on is that this stinks to high heaven.
It sure does. And speaking of other things that stink, we talked last week about Gavin Newsom's proposal for the 28th Amendment, and as soon as the show dropped for the patrons, Sean Sorentino of the Gun Blog Variety Cast sat down with me to tell me about a potential blind spot on this issue. I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Sean Sorentino. And of course, you remember Sean. If you go far enough back, you'll get to the Gun Blog Variety Cast. If you haven't listened to it, you probably should. Sean, as a patron of the show, gets the early release. And so therefore, shortly after the release of the show, I got a text message from Sean that said that I was totally wrong about Gavin Newsom and his 28th Amendment. Sean, how the heck was I wrong?
Well, you remember how you said, oh, there's no actual words. He's just proposing air. He's not actually proposing something. He's just giving some guidelines here. How can we take a look and determine if this amendment is any good if he doesn't actually tell us what he's wanting to propose? Remember that?
I do remember that, and he didn't propose anything, and I didn't sound like that when I said it.
Well, I mean, that's how it sounded to me. The reason that he didn't propose any language for the amendment is because he's not actually proposing a 28th Amendment.
He said he's proposing a 28th Amendment. What's he proposing?
Well, if you actually read the Governor Newsom proposes historic 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to end America's gun violence crisis. Yeah, that's the actual headline for his press release. What it actually says is passage of the 28th Amendment will require a convention to propose amendments to the United States Constitution, also known as an Article 5 convention or amendatory convention, which most of the rest of us call a convention of states. He's not proposing a 28th Amendment. He's proposing us to do a convention of states, like go back to Philadelphia and rewrite the Constitution.
Wait, the whole Constitution?
There's no rule that says if we have an Article 5 convention for proposing amendments to the Constitution, that the amendment can't be, all right, well, here's a new Constitution.
And so you think that that's what Governor Newsom's proposing?
Well, that's exactly what he's proposing. He can't propose an amendment because that's not how amendments are started unless you have a convention of states. So Article 5 gives you two different ways to amend the Constitution. The one that everybody thinks about, the one they're criticizing the governor on, is that 2/3 of the House and the Senate propose an amendment, they pass the amendment, and then it goes to the states, and then the states, 3/4 of the states have to ratify it at their legislature level, and that means 37.5 states is 3/4 of 50, well, which means 38 states. The governor of the state of California is not anywhere part of that process. He's not a senator. He's not a member of the House for the delegation of California. He's the governor. So he couldn't propose an amendment and have it run through that way. So he's proposing we go the other direction, so which is according to Article 5, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid for all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislature of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof. So what he's saying is, let's have the Constitutional Convention, basically. We'll propose an amendment or amendments or an entirely new Constitution, and then we'll hand it back to the states. And if you remember, that's kind of how we wrote the Constitution in the first place. People didn't like what we had before. The various states sent delegates to Philadelphia. They all sat down and they argued for a good long time. And then they went back to their states, and the states ratified the Constitution in, varying speeds. Delaware was right away, and some of the other states took a little longer. So there's not anything actually stopping them from writing a completely new Constitution in a convention of states.
Would that be what Gavin Newsom wants? I mean, it's not like California's a particularly centrist state or would have a whole lot of ears.
I think actually he has two real goals here. Number one, he gets the people who are all excited about having a convention of states on his side who think that they're going to take over and write term limits and balanced budget amendments and stuff like that. And the people who actually run everything anyway are going to take over and rewrite the Constitution and finish the job that Wilson already started of ignoring the Constitution we have. And this time, when they write the Constitution that they actually want, it'll all be legal instead of the administrative state we have. The other idea is that the people who keep calling for these conventions of states typically are libertarians, and the conservative part of the United States takes a close look at what's about to happen to them and say, oh, hell no, there will not be a convention of states. And that'll be the last we ever hear about libertarians writing balanced budget amendments and whatever other amendments that they want to write. So I think it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of things. There's really two different ways for Newsom to win here. One, he gets the convention of states and then they rewrite the Constitution, or the right says, oh, we will never consent to this, and then they never have to listen to convention of states ever again.
Plus, as I mentioned in the show, the Gavin Newsom just getting the press for all of this is, I think, the juice. I think the fact that nobody else is talking about changing the Constitution as a political means of going after gun control, especially in this like really, really goofy way where he's not just simply demanding a repeal of the Second Amendment. And that is novel enough that that's making him become a household name.
That's exactly correct. I think he's using the PETA strategy. We've all seen PETA doing just the most ridiculous ad campaigns ever. And you have to wonder, what kind of idiot falls for this crap, right? All that they do is they get mocked on the internet. They get the pictures of their signs. You know, we take them and put them on Twitter and we're like, oh, look at these idiots. But the first rule of getting attention is to get attention, right? Nobody says the way you get attention has to be smart. We know of very wealthy young women whose method of getting attention was to release videos of themselves in a position that you or I would probably be very embarrassed to be seen in. Is that family friendly enough for the podcast?
That's family friendly enough. I was actually immediately popped into my head. I will apologize because I actually don't really follow his channel, but I've heard good things. But Tex Grebner, he launched an entire YouTube career after shooting himself in the leg.
Right. If you want to change the world, the first thing you have to do is get everyone's attention. Whether you like it or not, Governor Newsom is excellent at getting people's attention. What he's done here is he's cemented himself as a presidential candidate, but he's not actually challenging Biden. The Democrats can't say, hey, Biden should be chucked out of office because, he's very clearly brain dead and he's acting basically as a living sock puppet for his wife and whoever else happens to be running him. He can't say that. The conservative side can say that, but his own party can't say that to him. In order to be a presidential candidate without being a presidential candidate, you just got to be the person that they think of when somebody finally decides Biden just isn't fit to run. And nobody who isn't deeply into there must be a black woman president is even possibly considering vice president for anything. At this point, I don't think that Kamala Harris could get elected as dog catcher. So nobody's thinking, well, obviously Kamala Harris will run and be president. So there has to be somebody else. And Newsom is positioning himself as that candidate, the name that they think of. He's a governor from a big state. He's in the news. He's very clearly anti-gun. So all the people who are anti-gun are going to think of that. He's very liberal. He's very attacking the other governor that looks like he has a good shot at it. And so he's putting himself in a position. So if Biden falls down a flight of stairs and doesn't get up, everybody looks at him. So he's making himself a candidate by doing this.
Plus, he's also younger, which is also a good sign, especially since Biden is older and clearly showing signs of his age. That will be obviously brought up if Trump ends up becoming the nominee, and certainly during the primary season, that Trump is older. And so, yeah, a younger face is also a good political move.
Right. And he's also, in a subtle way, he's challenging Biden from the left on guns. Biden keeps saying, oh, I won, I beat the NRA, I can do it again. Oh, Congress does this. And have you looked at his approval ratings on firearms? Of course, the conservatives hate him, so he's getting crap ratings on gun control from the right. But on the left, they're not real happy with him either because he's done 0.5% of
Fudge.
all.
And I still will argue that there is a growing contention of left-wing gun owners out there that didn't buy those guns to turn them back in.
Well, that's true, but they weren't going to vote for anybody on gun control anyway.
That's true.
But on the other hand, they will vote for him because he's very much pro-choice. He's very much protect LGBTQ community. He's getting all those votes anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the people who are very liberal who have guns are going to vote for the conservative candidate who doesn't like any of their other principles, if that makes any sense. Guns are not as big of a wedge issue, I think, as a lot of people seem to think. Just because a liberal gets their hands on a gun is not going to mean they're going to vote for the governor who decided to ban all LGBTQ books or whatever it is that they say, the don't say gay law, which really should be the wait till 8 law. I don't think it's that big of an issue. It's like very much one part of a larger group of things. So it's more of a signaling mechanism, but I don't think that that's going to peel off too many of these liberal gun owners.
Well, I think that was a lot of food for thought. I saw the Convention of States line in the thing, and I'm like, I don't get how that works. and thankfully, Sean, you came in and educated me, and hopefully educated a bunch of other people. Because again, it's only been done once before, and never again. So it's really been the Pete Best of constitutional amendments.
I think one of the things we need to remember is we're letting him weaponize us. He says something that we think is stupid, and we share it, and we make a big deal out of it, and we are participating in the PETA level sort of fundraising thing. He's making money off of us. We need to start ignoring this guy. I mean, don't ignore him so that he gets away with things, but we need to remember that part of his strategy is to piss us off so that we make him a household name. That's on us.
Thank you so much, Sean. That was some really good insight. And also, let me just thank again as we're doing this. Sean's like, yeah, just send me your side of the recording and I'll edit it together. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can do that. Cause guess what? You're the guy that taught me how to edit podcasts. So thank you so much, Sean, for doing that. And of course he threw the old Gun Blog Variety Cast transition bumpers in there. Those are good to listen to. It brings back some old memories. But right or wrong, the good news is that none of these things are going to happen fast outside of the recognition Governor Newsom gets for, again, this novel choice. And frankly, I'm perfectly comfortable with him earning the rep of being a rabid gun banner who might or might not be stupid or crazy.
¿Por qué no los dos?
He's a thing can be two things.
You know, Weer'd, that's a perfect transition. A thing can be two things, because in this episode of Gun Lovers and Other Strangers, David talks about turning an Uzi magazine into an AR magazine.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. I've discussed magazines in previous segments, specifically in episodes 86 and 87. In this segment, I'd like to talk about modifying magazines, particularly adapting some surplus Uzi magazines to work in my Colt 6450 Repro 9mm carbine. For more information on that project, listen to episode 199 of the podcast or read my post on blue-collar prepping. When the Colt 6450 and 635 were first developed in the 1980s, they were designed around as many existing components as possible. These included the M16 AR-15 receiver halves, furniture, and fire control group, as well as readily available magazines. If the project had been built for 45 ACP, it probably would have utilized M3 grease gun magazine. As it was focused on the 9mm cartridge, Uzi magazines were the best then available compromise between availability, reliability, and cost. The only snag was the magazine release. On the Uzi, this engages a slot about 4 inches from the top of the magazine. However, on the AR platform, the magazine is retained by a notch cut about 1.5 inches below the feed lips. In addition to the magazine catch slot, the bolt on a 9mm AR requires more clearance on the spine of the magazine as it reciprocates. The existing bolt relief needs to be extended to about 1/2 inch deep. For someone with basic tools, moderate skill, and using reasonable care, this shouldn't present too great a challenge. Recently, I came into possession of several vintage Uzi magazines and decided to give this project a try. I removed the base plate, spring, and follower from the magazines, then gave them a good wipe down to remove any grease. First, and possibly most important in a project of this type, is measuring. There are several ways to do this, but more precision is the better option, even if it takes additional time and effort. I have a factory magazine for my 64 or 50 repro, so I was able to use that as a template. In addition, there are several reference diagrams available on the internet. Using a Sharpie, I marked the magazine catch location on the side of the magazine. Then I measured again to make sure it was in the right location. As the old saying goes, measure twice, cut once. I repeated this process for the bolt relief cut on the spine of the magazine. Then it was time to break out the gunsmith's bane, also known as the Dremel tool. If possible, secure the magazine in a vise with soft jaws. This allows for the use of both hands to steady the Dremel and prevents the magazine from moving. Following my marks, I carefully cut 2 slots with a cutoff wheel, one each for the top and bottom of the magazine retention notch. I widened the lower slot until there was clearance for a Dremel milling bit and cut the web between the 2 slots. I then used a grinding bit to clean up the edges of the cut. The bolt relief was easier as I was able to cut down from the top. Once again, I used the milling bit to finish removing the excess material and the grinding bit to clean up the edges. After measuring everything again, I used a polishing bit in my Dremel and some hand files to deburr the edges of the cuts. This removes any displaced metal or rough spots that could affect function. I then cleaned the metal fragments from the inside and outside of the magazine tube and test fit in my carbine. It locked in properly with only normal effort. One thing to watch for is enough clearance between the feed lips and the ejector. They shouldn't touch, but nor should there be too great a gap. Finally, it was time to reassemble and test my modified magazine. Loading was no different than an original configuration, and everything seemed to work fine at first. The loaded magazine seated well, and the first round chambered properly. I fired off most of the rounds with no issue, until the magazine was almost empty. At this point, the second-to-last cartridge nosedived into the ramp. After some trial and error, I realized a small burr was catching on the follower and causing it to drag. A few swipes with a file, and this was no longer a problem. The process detailed in this segment is not limited to modifying Uzi magazines for use in a Colt-style 9mm PCC, but can be applied to many different magazine modifications. Be safe, have fun, and always try to take your time. You'll likely have a more harmonious outcome.
The next Sabbath, I went to temple with my father. However, it wasn't God I was trying to get close to. My contact at synagogue landed me my first Israeli-made Uzi submachine guns.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Erin or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. We're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check out the site. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the name Brena Bock. That's BrenaBock. I'm also in anthologies published under my actual name. Look for David Bock on Amazon, just not the guy who writes the computer books. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Yeah, magazines are such complex and critical items in most firearms. Most companies, when they're building a gun, they don't just build a magazine from scratch. Instead, they just pick an existing magazine design and then modify it in ways that suit the gun better.
I think at this point, we can consider ammunition magazines a very mature technology. It's very hard to improve upon them. And so, yeah, why reinvent the wheel, or in this case, the magazine, when you can just, hey, this has worked for generations. Let's just adapt it however little bit we need to fit it into a new gun and make that.
Also, David forgot to put it into his segment, but he let us know that these magazines pretty much will also still be backwards compatible with the Uzis that they were originally designed for. There might be, depending on how good a job he did in modifying them, they might hang up on the new magazine catch that he cut. But overall, they were an Uzi mag to start with, and they're an Uzi mag again. Well, now it is time on the show when we thank each and every one of our listeners. Thank you so much for listening to this show. But a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. So you can become a Patreon patron. Go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, like Sean, so they can hear it before that and get on the show in time for the very next episode, and bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film track, and the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share this really great show with your friends, both online and off.
I got that reference.
Well, good for you, Captain America.
You get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's WEERDworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Erin Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Erin Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So Weer'd gives me compliments, and I grudgingly take them. Our sense of self-worth is assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night. It's so true.